morning, Boomertown. It's a beautiful day to be 60 to 78 years young. Here's another golden oldie.
Your phone charge is on!
Your phone charge is on.
Oh. Careful, Seymour.
Watch out for the generation gap.
I wonder how they're going over there.
Yeah, bloody Gen Zs. Just remember, we're the ones that invented your precious World Wide Web.
Oh, Seymour!
Ugh, classic boomers, making the gap bigger. They'd understand if they just listened to us.
Yeah, season 1 was better.
Hey, do you think all this screen time is adversely affecting our social skills?
Well, it could be worse. We could be in our early 30s.
Hey, millennials are still cool, right?
I just feel like no one pays attention to Gen X. We've got so much to...
I don't care what they do, just not in my backyard. Hey, my backyard! This is their fault!
Don't look at us. We're literally perfect.
Typical young people. Everyone gets a trophy.
We were kids! You bought us the trophy!
Stop gaslighting us!
That's not what that means. Cancel. Cancel.
Lazy, entitled, stupid, selfish, dumb, crazy, lost, ignorant, spoiled, bad, sensitive, snowflake, annoying, fucked, and on and on and on.
That's how millennial and Gen Zers say they're routinely described, according to SUNY psychologist Carla Vermeulen, author of the new book, Generation Disaster. Policy analysts such as Scott Winship note that 70% of American 30-year-olds are doing better than their parents were at the same age.
For Generation Disaster, why are their parents or their grandparents having these negative reactions?
Boomers refuse to share any of their life wisdom with younger generations, unless it's to tell them to toughen up and get the hell off their lawn.
Well, we've got off to a start here, very, very quick and fast here.
All right.
And so I'm going to just go ahead and just welcome all our folks to Dissolving the Divide here. And we're really excited to have this lively conversation with Zerilath. And I'm going to let him share a little bit, about his kind of interests and kind of some of the work he's done. But yeah, how are you, Derek?
Bonjour, tout le monde, everyone. Leslie, Zerilath, great to have you. And a really cool, familiar cat who's quite conscious and all that, done a couple live streams, even had Tom Althouse, of all people, in regards to the original writer of the screenplay The Matrix, which was originally titled Immortal, which is really synchronicious, as I like to say, in regards to synchronicities, in regards to your name, Zerilath Immortal. Yeah. And we share some Italian roots. Buongiorno, mon amigo. So
French roots and French roots.
Oh,
that's part. Yeah.
Yeah, great to have you on. And just real quick, because I love the fact that I had you in mind because, you've been in radio. Revolution Radio, one of the original folks up in the daily fixture in regards to their original mixture. And so having people like yourself in mind, and so many people you've, spoken with either on or off radio, of course, and you're a solid Gen Xer, and just what you've heard and seen and observed throughout the generations and so many different talks on the radio and what you're doing right now and just the pathwork that makes us open the vistas even more to see, different sides of the things and kind of pull ourselves out of these dialects and, there's like the groomers, the boomers, the hippie shroomers and the zoomers and the bloomers and whatever else is in the mix, and Gen X is somewhere trying to stand strong since the days pre-internet, I guess, try to maintain the essence of what it is to be an individual in these transhumanistic times, in a sense. So and to take it back to the ancient future in regards to our ancestry without that ancestry.com and all that crap, right? So
Right.
you got a lot to share with us,
Yeah.
so yeah, take the mic, brother. Yeah.
Hey, look. People that warned you, like Cephicus, like now BlackRock owns your fucking DNA. How good do you feel about your choices? But anyway, yeah. So in 2012, that's when I started on Revolution Radio. I was part of that first year. I'm part of the original team of people that like went into production about it. I just, with me struggling as a musician and not very good with work, but something about the economy for everything, I was able to deal with it. I just, I wanted to just really focus on that while I was trying to figure out the dream, the music dream. So that's kind of what I was doing. And I'm 44 years old, right? So I'm 32 in 2012. I'm a 32-year-old man. And I am, I'm and over there, everybody is a boomer or Gen X. And usually it's like older Gen X, like Maria's age, right? So few young people in the game. And after a year or so of it and looking at everything that it was just like, man, none of my peers care about any of this. And this is so groundbreaking answers to important questions. Do people not see this is like we're expressing wisdom that you can't get on television? Like what is wrong with people? Because you can get out there, you starts weirding you out that you show this to anybody and younger people, and they're not looking so just oh man, what is going on with my gen? It's not even just generational. There were so few boomers in the first place, but there were a lot more boomers, it would seem, than Gen Xers in this game. So they were quelling a whole lot of things. You basically had a handful of people that just kept going after the JFK assassination and figured it out and, got enough of a grasp of it and people like Jordan Maxwell to get a whole movement going. You had Art Bell and stuff through the 90s and all these other pioneers in which a great deal of our research is resting upon. And there was a subtext that was going on in social engineering was kicking into higher gear because I remember in the 90s the conversation that children probably should not have been really having about homosexuality. Are you born with it, or is it some sort of behavioral thing, like a choice, right? And it was, of course, as a kid, you're just getting the filter of understanding that there's these religious people that are pushing their religious argument on it with that, indirectly because the Constitution or something, right? And so it just kind of repulses you because it just sounds like you don't care about how these people love each other, right? Like what? They seem to there's a relation. What is this about? All just the impulses and stuff, right? And then that's a generation that got raised having that conversation. This is the tail end of Gen X, people graduating high school in the 90s and stuff, right? Hold on a second, I've got traffic. All right, so give me a second. I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no worries. I just want to, reel it back in because, the reason why, this is a topic of interest and concern because, I've done my shadow work and had to, deal with my own resentment that I had for, older generations, looking at the world, why is it all fucked up? And what the hell were they doing, back in the days? How could they let it, fall to shit or whatever? And, yeah, just through the lens of just even like the technology in the media and all this stuff in the internet, they didn't grow up on that. They didn't have a smartphone to look up anything at your fucking fingertips, as if, you know, you don't have to, you know, displace yourself to a different, you know, area to go to a bibliothèque
and
a library, you know.
The conversation wasn't so far-reaching with so many darn rabbit holes, right? Because now it's extremely overwhelming because people don't know how to kind of like conduct a 101 on the right angle of a proper way to show people this conversation, right? And trying to catch how the generation thinks, right? It requires an adaptation of the messenger as far as who's going to be able to receive the message, right? And it just depends on whether you as a person, are you up for that job, right? And are you up for that job in a way that's not a politician? Because a politician is trying to be a shapeshifter on you. He's trying to, he's trying to make you believe in the agreeability of that person to serve a position that they're looking for, right? As opposed to somebody who's not looking for anything out of it other than, I think that it's better for me, because it's better for all of us that you actually see things for the way that they are, because I think that you're putting yourself in danger that you don't understand, right? Because if it's until they get screwed over, they're going to trust the system, right? And you don't want to just exploit somebody who's been screwed over by the system, because they might have gotten screwed over real bad, right? So this is what makes it important. Yeah.
My parents' generation, trusted the news. They adored the anchormen, Dan Rather, Walter Cronkite. It was on. It was a ritual in our home every night. And that's, and my parents were very trusting of, and they had this sense of ethics of like, you pay your bills on time, you work hard, you do the right thing. And somehow, that is, we're going to be, and then you trust, what the anchorman says, right? And so it's interesting that naivete, had good qualities that have in some ways been faded out, and lost. And in other ways, they created this opening for mind control, for the social engineers to come in and just like wash the minds of these future generations. And it's so funny because I have really never thought in terms of these generational titles, like I didn't even know like what I am in terms of a Gen X or whatever until like I'm like hearing people make reference to it like in normal conversation. I'm like, well, I guess I better get up with the labels. But I do see that there's relevancy here because you can see these trends in our world, in our society of thinking, consciousness and focus and value. And then it creates division between people and conversations that don't happen.
I was telling Eric about it earlier. A few years ago, me and Rodney had teamed up, Blue Flame, Blue Pearl Oracle, and we originally did a Pluto, like the America Pluto return transit through Aquarius video, very long video, kind of going through milestones up till this period of time of the Pluto transiting process. And after that, we did a Uranus video. We did something to work on Uranus because of the cycles of revolution to be expected. That there was a lot of it was around the time Uranus was jumping into Taurus, and with the North Node in Taurus, there was a lot to talk about in that respect. One of those manifestations was in Canada, the trucker protest, which was the first time Canada's ever had like a real social disturbance. Complete psyop, but they had it. There was a will charge of the masculine Canadian, populist and conservatarian to just do something about it, right? In that generation's level of restricted state in their nation, right? The Uranus is going to be dictating, things going on for you in the collective, right? That there's a collective relationship. I'm a Uranus in Scorpio generation, right? So I'm all about revolutionizing things involving the occult and the Phoenix, aspect of like, this needs to be destroyed and built anew, right? With the Uranus energies, and I see it on an occult level. Crap, how do I explain this to people? Like, that's me. And I mean literally see it. It's on my ascendant. It's like Uranus is like, boom, right there. Right? So I see everything like a wrecking ball. So I have to learn a lot of discipline, right? That's unique to me, but that's also an understandable thing. Like I mentioned, the Akira is a favorite movie of my, like, I identified with the idea of, man, just wishing I had all the power when I was that mad, right? Like that, every guy's fever dream. And there's demonstrations of that in good and evil, Incredible Hulk, is that being channeled into sacred anger. I've watched, the Sacred Anger dissertation by Passio. It's too bad all those alleged anarchists never saw that video. At least they would have done far less undeserved damage.
True. Yeah.
Do you see that the Uranus cycles are related to the generational shifts? Is that what you were implying?
Yeah, I think so, because the theme of a revolution is going to be governed by where Uranus is. So that's in your natal chart, but it's Uranus. It's not Saturn. It's not a personal planet. It's in the unconscious. And thus it is inherently in also the collective unconscious. So there's your personal relationship with Uranus, and then there's your collective relationship, because you're kind of going to be looking at it in a zeitgeist of your time, right? In the time of my early childhood, that Uranus and Scorpio stuff, the 80s was all of the epic sword and sorcery movies, Conan, early, like the Lord of the Rings animated, adaptations. All that stuff was during that period, late 70s as well, right?
I'm Uranus and Virgo. What does that represent?
I got Saturn in Virgo, right? Virgo's a funky energy for me, because in general, most of my energy is not very Virgan. If that's a word. I would probably defer to a more professional astrologer on that one, but I would assume that it would have something to do with a revolutionizing of like the way that we kind of like reserve ourselves, like a reservational kind of revolution. Like if conservatives are going to have like a serious revolution, I think it would be in Virgo. That would make sense.
That's interesting. Yeah, so we have all the astrological, impacts on us, each of our generations, as well as, right, all of the history, the experiential, the experiences of our ancestors. And then there's the world events and how that's shaping everything. And then there's the dark occultism, the engineering, the occulted practices that are manipulating, right? So there's a lot of layers in this, in this topic of generational behavior.
And the enemy is much more proactive in their influence, right? Because too many of the good guys are under generational programming of fearing X, Y, and Z things. It's like, okay, Snoop Dogg's got the goat necklace. All right. Now the Christian doesn't have enough intelligent context to understand that could also simply be because in sports world it means greatest of all time, right? And so he's the GOAT of hip hop, right? And they gave him the biggest fucking split in the world to deliver. Like, there's like, that's funny. That's fucking funny. And I'm an Aries, so no hate on the GOAT. No. These, all of these demonized earth gods, long live the horn gods, for fuck's sake. Right? It's
Pan is a goat man, right?
Yeah, Pan's a goat man, and but also Pan is there's a lot of issues there with Pan, in a sense, only because unwise people can get into a lot of trouble with Pan, right? Like, more so than a lot of other gods. Like you'll get yourself, certain gods, you will get yourself into serious trouble. I mean, I had a dream about Anubis, and then Anubis sicked his dog on me because I did something wrong. All right, so that doesn't mean that Anubis is a bad dog. It means I'm a bad dog, okay? Because he's a god.
So it's like these ancient archetypes, these gods and goddesses, right, that are with their symbolism has been hijacked. It's been manipulated and put under a certain belief system, right, in the mainstream, the exoteric. But the esoteric is much more subtle in a way. It's not all bad. It's not all good. If you look at any of the ancient, like the Nordic gods, they're not like all like upright folks. They're making mistakes. They're doing dumb things. They're learning. They're right. And I think that it's a whole different way of looking at things and how to understand ourselves. I guess, and like the goat isn't just like one thing.
The human, it's like you've got that anthropomorphization of the gods, right? Because these are conscious agent, sentient forces of the universe that we're kind of like their avatars in a sense, or technically vice versa. There are avatars, but it depends on how you're relating to the higher force and your emanation relationship to it and the gods at that particular time, right? Because there are times where my experience has been like with Thor, definitely not my avatar, and then there's just times where it's just like I feel like Thor, but I know that it's not like Thor. It's just like, no, it's just me because I've earned it, right? That's kind of part of it. And also puts you in your place. Don't start calling yourself a god like some of the Wiccan ladies do, but yeah, it's and living life in this experience. This is also kind of a, generate like the millennials more so than Gen X. And I suppose this is where I'm kind of like a millennial in my cusping is, there's this obsession with make-believe, right? And my chart happens to have Neptune and Pisces placements it has a Neptune placement and my Mercury's in Pisces, and like fantasies and stuff, and getting kind of like swimming in that, like that happens to suit me. and Neptune is the generational dreams, right? If you want to talk about that, it's the dream of the generation, which, is also going to be their delusions as well. And you look at these kids that are diluted and they're playing superhero. And meanwhile, I'm actually doing the work, hitting the books. And, it's just like, you're dressed like Doctor Strange. I'm dressed like me, but inside I am Doctor Strange. Right? Like that's the difference.
Virtue
Like,
signaling, yeah.
Yeah, that's the difference. The rest is just me channeling energy with makeup.
Yeah, it's a good point, and we're gonna get into movies in a second. I want to flip back and rewind because it's part of what I like to delve into with the whole hippity doo wop hip hop. Anyways, whatever opinions people have on whoever's the goat and this and that, it's so convoluted and distorted, whatever. But I've noticed, even I've done some talks on that just like really quick, but it's kind of relevant to speak about this here because, just going over the decades of hip hop, generation from generation, it just gets all weird, man. Like, and different. And that's just also coupled by the rise of technology as well. And like, different ways to make beats in all these things, and people have auto tune now more than ever and all this stuff. So it can hinge off of the whole transhuman trajectory, but not necessarily, because it's all just like technology in the end. Yet you can see certain in like MTV, even like Taylor Swift, more pop culture type of pop music. She was like having a video like all transhumanistic, like I was just watching that because I was in a restaurant and they had a TV on, and that's when I get subjected to that kind of stuff. And so the youth is subjected to that times a million, because I don't watch TV. I don't even have a TV. And all these people growing up, it's different than what we were used to growing up that had a television in the house that was on for 5 to 6, 7, 8 hours a day type of thing,
Yeah. Well, yeah, because hip hop is as an art form is connected to the ancestral language of the men of the South. Right. This is this is largely African heart and soul, that's picked up a handful of things through its relationship to different aspects of music they were exposed to in their American experience. And by the way, when I say African, because I do think that maybe there's some theories about who was here first and what their skin tone was like, at least in the South of the Americas. I'm not necessarily saying that all of this is connected to slave migration either, on that level of a trip. But that's a different rabbit hole. But that's just important context because we are talking about generations. But long story short is that because of the eugenics type of agenda for how they are mitigating the lower class of the unwanted races by the elites reckoning, not by my reckoning. I think all races are beautiful. They're really just exploiting them, keeping them in in an environment like, what is it? Is it still mumble rap? It's been many years. Is mumble rap still what rap is right now? Because that's the drugs, right? They're rapping about the drugs that are making them mumble in the fucking first place.
Yeah, too much lean on the scene and all that crap. Yeah, there's so many subdivisions though. So yeah,
made them lethargic. It's made them lethargic, and it's made them sad and pathetic, and dangerous to the people around them that just think that they're lethargic when there's going to be ugly things that are going to arise. And it's no surprise that people are dying at their concerts on a certain health level. We can talk about what's going on in the underground metal scene. It's a little bit different, but it's largely a white and Hispanic thing in New York, largely. For that, that scene's kind of always been like that, but like that's just out of shape in general, right? Like a lot of passion in the play and the music. Like there's nothing wrong with the music in and of itself, but the health is really hurting with a lot of these guys, right? And all of it, I'm looking at them and it's just like, ooh, 5% of effort this year. Could you give me 5% of effort? If I said something, would you not be like, I don't know about any of that, man, right? Like, it's just like, breathing? You don't know about breathing? Like, I tell everybody first pranic breathing. And it's just like, no, it's just like, you're already breathing. Just do it correctly. Oh, painful. But, it's shadow work. Nobody wants to be alone with their own thoughts, even if those thoughts are being followed by the music. But sitting still does that to you.
True, yeah. Leslie, we're going to bring it back to the whole ancestors because, going back to, when you mentioned, Africa, I was thinking like, the black dragon part of, the yellow, white, and red and all that, and how this correlates with how we can just really get back in touch with, it's like, we all came from somewhere, and, our great times, tenfold, whatever, like, who were they and what were they like and what were they connected to and what was their relationship with this Mother Earth and everything that, pre-existed all the buildings and edifices and all these things. And we could take it back to Atlantis when, before the fall and all that, when we had at least, 12-strand DNA connection to, source, and our life force energy was kind of letting us live to a couple hundred years and all that jazz, right? So keeping those,
I think that's the root, right? That's the continuity among all of us, right? At all ages and generations, is if we are connected to our root of our who we are, where we come from, and the foundational principles of life, and natural law, then those all young generations can be creative and do whatever they want and develop, as long as that root is held, right? The string travels through time. And that, I think, is what's been cut off, right? And so then we're, all these generations are just sort of floating around as like loose entities almost, which is dangerous. And it's cut off from the natural law. Cosmic law.
They're deteriorating themselves in the epigenetically, right? It's just like when I was on that path, you look at who I was as an entire being, we could go back more than like just me losing the weight, because I've been doing like the spiritual side of the work for forever. You can, if anybody ever knew me like before 2012, it's just, man, what a mess of an I am that I was. Eventually I started purging a whole lot of bad things from my diet, but it was hard to get the non-fattening stuff out of it. But it took a tremendous amount of work. It took a tremendous amount of changing my entire relationship with how I went out to go eat and everything else. And then all that stuff just kind of rewires the brain too, especially once you settle into these healthier habits, right? And I think people are afraid that they're not going to like the new them, that they're afraid that that they're not going to like being more authentic, right? Which is kind of confusing things for really I hate to make it sound like it's a Christian thing, but it's the addiction to sin. Theoretically, it's addiction to doing things wrong, right? So, and if you understood what sin really is, it doesn't mean I'm trying to tell you like who you can love or not, even though maybe you're not being super healthy in that regards either. But it's just like, people don't want to be healthy. They want to do what they want. And if the medicine is there for their life, then that's great. And that's kind of the way I think everybody is. And they get really angry with you if you tell them that you got to stop just pleasing this oversimplified idea of who you want to be, right? It's just like you're supposed to figure out who you want to be in the first 20 years of your life, and then get over it as nothing special except to people that like you. Stop trying to make everyone like you.
Yeah, you got to like yourself first and all that.
Yeah.
And,
right, and doing freedom doesn't mean that you just get to do whatever the hell you want all the time, for pleasure. Yeah, there's a certain path to follow that's based on some responsibility in the world and to yourself and to others, and doing the right action. And I feel like that the idea of being moral is almost seen as you're a prude or something. When you talk about doing, morality, it's so old fashioned,
Well, right. Well, they throw that out there because they don't expect anybody to have any better of an answer than something biblical, in which there's already a pre-programmed response, right? It's just like a certain generation that was locked into a certain way of thinking. Some Uranian energy came in down the line that was picking on that thought and said, no, we're not going to allow this thought to freaking run my life anymore because politics is a thing, right? So that's a big part of the entire fight that was created in the atmosphere of the millennials that put and the boomers that put the Democrats into the social optics of our theater in 2008. It doesn't matter who the hell the president was. The point is, it was the Democrats, and that doesn't even matter because they're both serving a whatever. And you have to start seeing how the whole system works. I was watching an interesting thing from Michael Tessarion. We probably shouldn't call it the Hegelian dialectic anymore because Hegel didn't actually come up with it. It's just adapted from Hegel's thoughts, in which Tessarion said that Hegel has writings that would disagree with it, and he had to defend Hegel.
Hegel the haggler, eh? No, just kidding.
Whatever that dialectic, whatever that controlled opposition dialectic that we're talking about is,
it's no Hegelian, man.
It's just sometimes I will sound like a lefty because of something that I picked up that has worked really well in certain arguments that still needs to be reiterated, right? And that I've judged through all these years is that if I say it like this is the most proper way that I can undermine that bullshit, because there was bullshit that needed to be taken care of, right? There's reasons why certain things that have changed in the past we like and dislike, right? Not too many people, including the Christians, thankfully, are complaining about the pot thing, right? I mean, they are, but they don't want to do it like the old school lock. Like nobody's that fucking savage or dumb on that conversation anymore. They're more savage and dumb like that on other things, right? But that's because a certain undermining conversation came in from some Uranian generation, subverted that paradigm about what cannabis was, that contradicts the idea in the law, and thus the law lost all of its integrity because it wasn't God's law. That's an example of how natural law defeats unnatural law. And even if it's still on the books, there's no spirit behind it. There's still laws on the books that applied to common crimes of the 1700s. They don't take these laws off the books. They just bury them for a while, and sometimes they just hate you enough to bother you for, spitting out your gum on the sidewalk. It's like that.
Yeah, you ain't got to be in Singapore for that. I'm sure you heard about. So yeah, you brought up the whole thing with food and all that, and I mean, it just ties into all these things where we've seen the trajectory. It's not just transhumanism or whatever. It's just like we're getting more, detached and hybridized, away from the original essence. And we talked about the Matrix in like at least 3 live streams for like 10 fucking hours, man. At least, and simulacra and simulation, so they're making a copy out of the original. Think about just any kind of fruit and do the research and people have made memes about this, right? Of a carrot or a strawberry today, what's the nutritional value of that as opposed to something 100 years ago? It's like, right? Yeah. So that trend of just like, and you can take that to anything, not anything, but so many different things that are woven into the fabric of society. That's kind of just made things evolve yet devolve at the same time, in a sense, in regards to like quality and health and holistic.
In culture, in culture, it's Jim Carrey and Cable Guy, right? Jim Carrey and Cable Guy has no personality. His entire personality is a hodgepodge of television characters that taught him how to emotionally manipulate his mother. Right? And so he's a fucking sociopath. Right? I'm pretty sure that counts as sociopath, where if you could bypass an entire lifetime of programming, you'd probably find a decent human being underneath. Possibly, depending on how seriously he cared or didn't care about any life-threatening situation he may have been putting Matthew Broderick through in the torturing of him throughout that film that we all laughed at so well, right? So a lot of these guys, they found these favorite super characters that are very human and approachable, because the age of Aquarius, our accessibility to personalities, because your favorite YouTuber and he likes you in the comments section and things like that. I got certain people that I enjoy my interactions with when they happen live. It's just like, if I'm hanging out, like, Robert Phoenix, like I love listening to his astrologies, and I'm in the chat room and he'll notice me and he'll shout me out. And it's just like, oh yeah. Cause I think Robert's awesome. And when someone I think is awesome actually says my fucking name on their stream, whether it brings me a sub or not, it just feels good for me, that like all these people, and that matters to me a lot because I got Leo stuff going on. That's my natural reaction, because everybody has to love me.
A lot of Leo in the house here. It's like that conditioning too, with the likes on social media is really capturing this part of human personality that likes to be liked and noticed, right? To get liked. Yeah, that lion, that Leo. And
I wanted to interact with the graphic. Okay, cool. All
right. Yeah, acknowledge me, see me. Yeah. Yeah.
The next line is going to be something, huh? 888. Can't wait. But anyways, what else is on the plate in regards to this whole generational debate? Because, like I want people, to be able to just have more conversation. Because, I've lived in France for, a good amount of time, and I've noticed a different dynamic of how the youth interact and speak with the older generations, actually, and they seem more integrated, if you will, or more accepted, and like the adults speak to the kids more like they would to anyone else, almost, so and it's kind of funny sometimes, because kids ain't trying to hear that, they got their pouty face or whatever, but it's just like, c'est la vie or whatever, right? And to each their own. I'm not saying it's the best or whatever, but I've just noticed that, in respects to myself, growing up, I was kind of like, not always weary, but like, oh, like these older people, they must know so much more than me or whatever. Yet, like when we get older and realize certain things, it's like, well, we just grew up around people of, there's a bunch of generations before us of babies that had babies, like even, in the 50s or 30s or whatever, wasn't it more common for, you know, couples to have kids when they were younger in age than it is today?
Possibly.
No, yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely. So
Getting
many
married young and yeah.
I mean, I'm suffering that. I'm 44. I'm single.
I'm
Right?
working, man. Shit. Well,
I'm still fighting my arrested development. I'll humble myself right now. People understand that I do like this. This is my parents' basement, right? What? My mom came through to do laundry. That's why I turned off the video, right? I did that for production, not to hide the fact that I struggle, right? That I struggle. It's my own damn fault. And that's the difference between me and the infant savage.
How so? Please clarify.
The infant savage blames their parents until they die because their parents are the government, right?
Right.
They can't yell at their daddy the way they want to, so they yell at Trump as their sacrificial scapegoat, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Or whoever, right? Yeah.
It's a new psychological and psychic relationship that a generation is having with the government. It's not like, at least when the hippies were quite the force, had quite the spirit for what they wanted to have. They actually had a lot more proper knowledge and wisdom. And granted, is the progress of time we're watching obviously it was better then because we're comparing it to the deterioration of now, right? So obviously it had problems. The problem is that conservatives only can frame their argument in a let's take it back to the way we did it this year, and then everybody just thinks that they want to take the entire universe back to 1959, right? Thus, make America great again means it's 1959 in America again, because X, Y, and Z 1959 laws want to be reinstated in a isolation from the issues that we resolved. But somebody's saying, no, they're not resolved. What do you mean they're not fucking resolved? Who was president for 8 years? It's been resolved. The rest is just you guys fighting on the street.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different, waves of, social conditioning in the political, geopolitical level in and of itself, throughout the generations. And it's really interesting to see. In France, in other countries, like folks ain't waving their flags. They don't have, little signs out that, who they're trying to be politically affiliated, whether it's an election year or not. It's just, it seems more of an American thing than anything else. But one thing you mentioned, and you also mentioned this in Chris Jansen's live stream the other week in regards to like the whole LSD thing. And, that goes along the lines of what I was trying to get at, of how, all this social conditioning and what we're inundated with all types of other ways that they manipulate us is through drugs. And what do we have today? All this synthetic stuff as well. So it goes in line with what I'm saying as well. Like things are more synthesized and artificial, it seems. And, you have like fentanyl, like drizzled in like fucking so much other shit now. And like people are dying and overdosing.
And even if the drug is healthy for you, they can apply that to unhealthy behavior, right? It's just like, I work my ass off. I smoke pot a lot. I enjoy working my ass off high. I'm very good at it, in fact. So like part of the arguments that were made over the years is that like pot doesn't make you lazy. If you're a lazy person, you smoke pot as an excuse, right? That's what I learned from my own personal experience. Because when I smoked pot, I relaxed a lot, right? I didn't smoke pot until I was like mid-20s, 23 or something like that is when I like first smoked pot. And I had to have like some stuff in my life break down, and for me to go to just doing it as an almost irrational decision, because I had friends that were doing it all the time, and they were not like low energy people. They were fun. We liked each other. You know, it was free on him because he liked me. So I was like, all right. And first night I got high, and I was just like, oh, it doesn't get any crazier than this. This is weird and it feels good. And I like it. Right. And I just kept going back, and I never turned back. And it helped me because of the way my mind worked. It actually helped.
It's like a lot of biases have been conditioned through messaging, probably that came from the schools and the TV, right? That then were passed on. And I think it's then like the new generation then starts to question the veracity of those things that were put on them. And when you start to see that most of them were bullshit, then you stop believing that shit, you know, and starts, you know, kind of, in a way, dismissing and disrespecting the previous generation. And I think, you know, then you add on, like, for this relationship between the elders and the youth, it seems to vary culturally a lot. Like, you know, the Italian, Hispanic, French, you know, cultures, you know, or even like Persian cultures, there's a much different type of relationship, Indian, you know, relationship between parents and children. And in the US, somehow I think we've just been like, part of our independence is like, just like moving out and not looking back, you know. It's a different, you know, a lot of more parents are put in nursing homes, and, you know, adult children don't stay with their families as much, even though like economically it makes so much more sense to stick together. You know, there's just different, and there's judgment, you know, judgment in a negative way, like in a biased kind of shaming way,
right,
for people. So it's like, then you have TV shows. Like I've watched, like my kids, I have 23, 25, and a 16-year-old. And a lot of the shows that they were watching, like the parents are abandoning the children, right?
Yeah.
They're like off on vacation while the kids are running the show. The kids are running the show.
Yeah.
And the parents are like negligible, you know?
It is not a shock to me, you know, the millennials, they grew up, millennials and maybe Gen Z, I suppose, grew up on SpongeBob, right? You know, like on a level, like I grew up on Ren and Stimpy, right? Ren and Stimpy was my crude, subversive stuff with all of its secretively homoerotic nonsense and everything else, right? And I turned out to be really fucked up but awesome at the same time. These kids are turning up fucked up and terrible at the same time. Right? It's you know, like they've got them sitting in front of these two characters, these two spirits that are like right, and so you've got like the spazoid and the lethargic, right? And so the lethargic becomes the archetype for the obesity people in the country, the slow people in the country. And then everybody who's like, you know, practically on Third Reich levels of uppers, fucking amphetamines and shit. Like, you know, that's the SpongeBob people.
Yeah, it ain't just the ADHD folk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened to Scooby-Doo, man?
And, the level of bullshit in just medical science, holistic, like all these everything that's common sense about health, you know, on top of deeper truths in the esoterics of living your life in a healthy, holistic way, just are so robbed of us that like all these people's, their minds are just like, the only thing that can save us is the stuff that that our beautiful atheist scientists have created for us. There's no God in that pill, thank God. thank the monkeys or whatever the hell.
Hopefully they're not flying too far and dropping dew. Anyway, yeah, the
Not
whole
explosion.
And what's up with the media? And so, we see a lot of things on the internet these days with all these. I don't even like to call them influencers. People just being really popular on YouTube because they talk a lot about poop culture, and there'll be some reactionary videos or people chiming in on XYZ, whatever type of Disney Plus or Netflix or movie, whether it be a blockbuster or a flopbuster. It seems like the views in the algorithms are more towards like negative types of reviews and all that jazz. All that aside, it just seems that I grew up on things of it was right before Johnny Quest, and that stuff seemed cool because there would be reruns. People need to consider reruns and stop acting all braggadocious behind a bunch of memes on Facebook or Instagram or whatever because like, oh, if you're this old you remember this fucking TV show, and it's like, and what big fucking deal. What did you gain from that, TV show? What were the allegorical references to that? What were the moral messages? What the fuck shaped anything of your personality because of that? It's not just like, wow, standing behind a fucking, TV show or whatever the fuck, People have so much ego attachment towards whatever the fuck they're subjected to sometimes, And, like, we can pull back and realize and, deconstruct what that thing is all about and realize like, oh shit, why was I so like gung-ho about this one? It's really just like, in the end, this life is temporary and all that, and it's great to see people showcasing their art. Like Voltron was really cool growing up watching that, or even like X-Men from like 97, 98, that kind of stuff, or those old school originals. I appreciate people's imagination being showcased in so many different ways. It's awesome. Yet, like the point of what I'm getting at is just, the fans get in such a fucking frenzy with, any kind of critique about it that it creates such a clash. Kind of like, the video that I did with the Acolyte, stuff, but yeah, you see the difference of generations of that kind of speech and reference.
Well, these are these we're having a changeover in our gods, right? The gods of the baby boomers and the Gen Xers and some of the millennials were these these various Joseph Campbell hero's journey archetypal like superhero things, right? And so these superheroes are our gods. We worship Doctor Strange, we worship Wolverine or whatever. We're living our lives in accordance to the ethos of their life, right? And so this generation, which has been deliberately engineered to surrender to everything, has to change what it is these characters are really about, right? And so their situations are not heroic. These characters are about this is the kind of character that can do it that you've never seen before, right? It's just like, this is the black person that can do it. This is the woman that can do it. This is the I don't know what it is that can do it, right? That or that this is the only they can tell me what they are without me being destroyed can do it, right? It's just like it's her, right? Like so
like a savior. It's a savior.
Those are this is it's this new level of insult. I've said this about. It's about the understanding that you have when you look into the pagan history of Ireland, right? And then you realize that like many of these spirits were once the gods in the oldest stories, and then they got turned into fables and folklore and reduced to diminutive stature. Like the leprechaun is fucking Lou, or I can't even say it right because I don't have the I need somebody who could fucking speak Gaelic just to say the god's name right. But now he's the leprechaun because it's still got the leprechaun, right? That's that idea, right? That level of that's what's going on here. They're doing really, really insulting things. This isn't, people were all up in a tizzy back in the day when they invented Miles Morales, but it was just like, but Miles Morales was never designed to take away from Peter Parker.
Right? Spider-Man reference.
Right. Yeah, precisely. Right. This is designed to take away from them. Right. There's an emasculation process and everything else, because they're trying to have this idea of a redefinition of the gods of this society to come in with this generation, right? This is their urinary act. Urinate. That's hysterical. There's the joke. See, the puns write themselves, right? And we're Uranus and Taurus. This is the earthen side of Venus, right? So that's Uranus and Taurus is doing all this stuff, and it's subverting the very physical side of femininity.
So you want to talk about that recent Paris Olympic ceremonial thing?
All right, yeah, I've mostly just seen what everybody's bitching about. You never found the footage in your country, right, from the scene that I sent you, because that was from NBC's website, right, for the footage. So I figured, whichever country runs TV over there, you go to their YouTube channel and they would have had it, right? Because there's 3 books they pull out of the library. It said something in French, and I wanted to know what they were, because that's a trifecta of whatever that ritual was, right? So I saw bits and pieces, and I was saying this earlier. It's largely like, yes, it's the generation that we were just talking about doing this stuff, this Uranus and Taurus generation that's involved in the conspiracies and the dark sorcery, right? But also I'm saying, like, this is the flamboyancy of France in the first place, right? There's a thematic thing going on, right? So I don't think it was the opening, but it was the opening of the Liberty segment or something, right? So there's this graphic, and it's the French Revolution, right? So I don't know if that castle was the Bastille, but I'm looking at it, that's supposed to be the Bastille, because there's Marie Antoinette, right? July 14th is Bastille Day, right? And then
yeah. And it's that where they were, rocking out with that?
Right. So
I know where that is.
Her head was decapitated, and she was holding it and singing.
She was holding
red. Yes, in the window.
Astrologers are like,
hundreds of times,
right? There's the Gorgon. The Gorgon's head has been removed. Now the opera singer, I guess she must be the Ship of Liberty. The fat lady is singing on her way, and she was lovely, by the way. But she's a plus size gal, but some of the best opera singers are. So she's rolling in. They're playing Les Mis' Sera, right? I was telling you this in the thing. It was to me, it was the funniest joke once I realized it's a meme. It's because that's French for "this is fine." The Bastille is on fire, and Marie Antoinette's decapitated, and there's a metal band running havoc, and there's cannon fire, and this is fine. I'm like, yes, this is the best meme I've ever seen. So anyway, so they're trying to say that, this is everything that the French Republic stands for, everything that comes after this, right? And then it goes on into this thing where they're in downtown Paris, and there's these ladies on the stilts going like this, and like, I guess there's this idea that France didn't have the allowance to get to this kind of culture, specifically because of values that came from the aristocracy, right? And I'm a little fuzzy on that period of history, on the like what was going on in Paris level and and across the country of France as a whole, and the empire of France in many respects. But I do know that they are dressing like Marie Antoinette, and maybe that was the point. It's just like, why aren't I allowed to be like the French aristocracy? Because now they are, right? You become what you hate. So it's kind of like that, but on the unconscious level, as they then, proceed to run through, like, because it's French, right? Everything there was just like, well, I don't see one fucking alpha male. Like all the male performers look like bitches. And so, all right, there's a bunch of there's a bunch of
With the exception of the guy on the pale horse.
These are the Karens of Paris having their little thing with all of their fucking gay friends. This is Paris. This is Paris. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, this has been the joke about the French, that they're like this for forever. And the Christians are shocked and appalled of the French as this debaucherous thing. It's just like, stop pretending you like a country of religious liberty and then get shocked when religious liberty means moral liberty.
Yeah, they slipped into from liberté to liberalism, literally,
right?
Under the Macron, macaroni.
There's a Liber of some sort going on here.
Yeah, but you brought up the aristocracy and all that, and how there's many other countries outside of America that are much more, I guess, like deeper rooted into their culture and history and all that stuff. And America really conceived, in like the 1700s, whatever, arbitrarily, it doesn't matter. But just in retrospect of, in context of other places and where Americans derive from in and of itself, So, yeah, it just goes back to, things that we need to remember in regards to, remembering, our collective constitution within ourselves and what we are actually rooted in. Because a lot of people have been uprooted from those places. They don't even know where they're actually from, and they're going for places like Ancestry.com, which is, kind of like this DNA info bank or whatever,
right?
Thanks to BlackRock or whatever, right? As you said. So how can people really get in tune with their roots? Because we're all in network with the Dragon of the White Temple, Blue Flame Healing Arts and Occult Sciences, and all that with Black Earth Productions, Seth Esposa. And he emphasizes this more than a lot of people out there. So how can we, try to relay these messages and find ways to really tap into our ancestry?
What I've been doing to tap into mine is that like I worked off the history, the etymology of the family name to the best that I could. And this is on my father's side, thus my father's father, so on and so forth. This is my Scottish aspect of who I am, right? Because I believe up until my father's father, that side of it is largely pure blood, like Scottish. I think it was all like Scottish American before that or something. But I do know little things like I don't hide my name, right? So like I just go by Zerilath because that's me. But like in my family, I am a Purdy, Stephen Purdy. So Purdy has things to it. Like I am so fortunate. Let's grab it right here. To have within the household, not sure exactly where it was gotten from, but like here's the family shield. All right, so this is my family shield. I tried figuring out what I'm a part of in, Scottish family line. But it's a bit tricky because I need to go and I probably have to start diving into records, like birth records on paper is probably the way to you have to go about it. I do know that Purdy is derivative of various different things like party, and it's all Latin, right? So this is post Christian, right? So like this is not a heathen. Purdy's not a heathen name. It's a Christianized name. It means for God, per deus. So whichever members of my family were the ones to be christened in this manner, that's what I have to find to then get into the heathen side of my history, right? So that's what I'm doing until I get my my reading.
That's similar to what I've been doing. I've been going online. I've been I've found in the last 10 years that there's a lot more information now about my lineage, and that unfortunately probably has to do with all the people who have gone into these DNA banks like Ancestry. But I'm tracing names, so I'll go to a name, and then I'm going to where the origins of that name, because more than likely that would bring back to a certain land, and then extrapolating back from there, and in studying history, right, that helps a lot too, to look at the history, and then you realize how much movement there was among all the tribes and everything. So it's kind of silly to really, even if we, I can go back to Scotland or to the Netherlands or Sweden or wherever, but those people before then were traveling all over. They may have migrated there from England or from Norway or Iceland. There's all of this the movement. But I think so I kind of think, okay, Germanic, Scandinavian, kind of Celtic, these larger brush strokes and then what was the indigenous, as far as we can tell, what was that their spiritual life like? What were their worldviews? How did they survive? What did they eat? Those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking those land masses are so close together, like when they were connected within Pangea and all that stuff.
Yeah. Some maps have been going around showing that the Adirondacks is the same mountain range as basically the Scottish Highlands or something like that, right?
Oh, where's the Adirondacks?
That's they're two sides of the same thing.
Upstate New York.
Oh wow! Okay, damn.
Yeah, upstate New York. That's where I went. That's where I went for ritual. I was in the Adirondacks for both the eclipse and the summer solstice.
Wow, it's a hell of a name too. Cool. You want to take a break real quick?
Yeah. I want to take a minute to set myself straight.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's take 2 minutes.
All right. Be right back.
Sure thing. Yeah, Leslie, feel free to do your thing, or if you want to chat. Oh yeah, can I just ask you real quick? What would be a good? I got the video finished. It's good to go. I want to upload the Dissolving the Divide after we finish with Zerilath. What would be a good title for the video? Connecting the body with the mind spirit thing. I don't want to sound cheesy or overly spiritual like that, because we're talking about working out and this and that, and I put it in a really cool intro that's about working out, So any thoughts? You're muted, by the way. I think you muted.
like like the divide is almost between yourself as small and yourself as big and strong. It's like, the untapped power in your own physical being, right? And how, by building your body, you find yourself, and and how that can transform you. So, that's not a title, but to me, that's like one important point. So it'd be like, conquering your divide, or, to not be your strongest self almost, or something like that. But it's physical, but it also, he talks enough about the mental aspects that are a barrier, and most people never know what their bodies could actually build into.
Yeah, true that. Yeah.
It's a holistic, though. It's like a holistic. It could be just something simple like holistic strength training. Pushing past the barrier of your existing self-image to become, a holistically strong.
Ooh, that's a long title, but
Yeah, I mean, it's like, maybe write it and then shorten it,
Word, yeah. Yeah. So to bring it back with Zerilath, how much time do you have, by the way? And do you have some questions to kind of reel it back in, to kind of focus on, bringing to the ancestral thing, more of what you were thinking about with this, as well as like any other questions and, divides that you notice within the generations?
Okay, I'm back whenever you're ready.
Zara, let's ask Zerilath that question.
Okay.
Ask that question. Yeah.
All right, repeat it.
All right. Just give 2 seconds of silence, so it'll be cool with the edits.
Yes.
125, cool. All right, yeah. So, kind of winding down the last half an hour, more or less. We gotta pepper you with a good amount of questions, because yeah, I love it, getting into the ancestral thing, and moving more towards like just what our essence is made of. Yet, we see what's on the lamestream, and what people are completely distracted, and I mean like literally like distracted from the traction of a proper pathway to proper individuality, and what you got to say in regards to how that's just an observation, I guess, and you could tie that into just what have you noticed with all these different discords? There's like a different flavor for every generation, right? I guess. And there's like whatever level or degree of resentment, if you will, or appreciation. And in light of what Leslie said earlier, of like trying to respect elders and hold them large, and also hold ourselves large through our research into ourselves more and our ancestry. I think it would show more admiration for our fathers and mothers and everyone else, involved with our family tree, I guess.
I think the trouble is that too much
help with generational trauma too.
Yeah. I think the trouble is that like there was a lot of fundamental problems that have really been bad for these generations that are screwed up now, that are coming from those generations in particular, that were legitimate part of issues that before these matters emerged, what people were having all sorts of conversations up through 2016 and such about like, we have to have new ways of doing things in therapy. We need, there's the conspiracy theorists trying to find, those holistic solutions to things. And then there's the university, science people that were working on just figuring out something new that works, and many of which were deliberately grifting. on behalf of the dark sorcerers. And so respecting the elders, respect the elders have to be respectable too. It's just like, how do you have respect for someone who didn't treat you right your whole life, right? You're going to have to find an elder that you respect. And, you're not always going to find that, right? Your parents are your parents, right? Your family is your family. Those are our default options, unless you were kicked out of that family or something. Right? Just that's the problem. It's not always it's not always the way it seems in appearances, because people have been kept up incredible appearances, right? So many people that were revered as certain kinds of good people and good fathers, and then their demons emerge, with like, oh, they used to beat them this way and that, and and all these things get found out because somebody committed suicide or something like that, right? This is one of the profound effects I was thinking about, which is it's a very Gen X movie. Because a bulk of it takes place in the late 70s, which is the Iron Claw, the Von Erich family story. And those appearances are being upheld by like this super villain wrestling dad, who is the owner of the family wrestling business and makes his kids wrestle by making them believe that wrestling is who they are, right? And he puts them in, he puts them into that in a way by, through filtering or whatever, right? And like, that's the kind of film that, like, by the end of the film, regardless of the truth of the father, Von Erich, like, the person in that film, if you know that person in real life, you that's not much of an elder to respect, if that's the person that raised you as such, right? And if the whole public knows that you raised a person that way, you would not be an elder deserving of respect, right? So
good point.
That's a big responsibility. These older generations that have said, some, like, there's just a lot of things that
there's no self-entitlement to this.
Right.
It highlights the trauma, right?
Yeah.
What are the results of how kids will act if they've been traumatized, right? By their family, within their community. They're going to rebel. They're going to want to do the opposite, right? So there's damage to that lineage.
Yeah.
From that trauma. And, it's okay to be different. Being different is cool, right? And all that.
Yeah.
But what do they have to hold on to? What is the legacy, really, that should be passed on? And I think the wrong things have been emphasized. That then, you kind of wake up and say, wait a minute, I don't want to be a slave to my 9 to 5. This isn't the legacy. My parents were off on this, like working like slaves. So then what is it really? Like, we're having to figure it out, because our parents and their parents, they were in wars. They were, seduced by the media. They were indoctrinated by religion, so that they actually lost the real true foundation of moral code. And that's what you teach your children. That's what you pass on. That's the legacy. This is where it comes from. These ancient, mystery traditions were all about teaching about the truth of the universe and how it works, and how do you treat each other, and the cause and effect and all of that, right? No wonder there's all this division among all these generations. There's no continuity based on anything that's of value and of reality. It's all bullshit, a lot of it. Or guilt, how much is guilt based?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a complicated arrangement of various kinds of wounds, right? Like we don't have like a like we've not had in a very 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 long time in this country like a monoculture, right? Where you know, like in Europe, like up until the recent immigration situation, it's just like there's each nation has its kind of personality and its sensibilities of what traditional family cultures grew up in, traditional, whether it be on the left side of their culture or the right side of their culture, right? But you know, here in here in the States, like we don't have the same kind of thing going on, and you know, it's kind of like the way the with the distractions, right? We have 50 million versions of a product, right? And then at the end of the day, it gets reduced down to 2 products in which these are 50 million flavors divided amongst 2 different products, right? And this becomes more obvious to you when you go to the store and you realize how much of everything is oh, this is primarily corn, this is primarily sugar, this is primarily trans fats, and right? And so when you are you know, when you're sitting there and you're exposed to all these different things, I think that can maybe overwhelm you, and then you don't have too many relatable access points, and you might end up like running away into something that you don't understand because you don't have an access point that you're familiar with. So you know, you grow up like if you're in the programming, right? And say you're like a white person who's anti-white, you may go and look at the way that a modern black family is raising their children, and model it off of that, regardless of whether the world is looking at that in favorably or not, just from personal decisions of the subject that you are modeling yourself after, not because of who that person is born as. Right. And so these are the outlets that I think that a lot of people are looking for, because you get that now because your entertainer is also like a reality TV star, right? You know, it's just like, I do videos while I'm driving. I make videos of me on my punching bag. There's a lot of slice of life on my channel. It isn't just me sitting down reading Heidegger. Right. And I'm trying to inspire people too. I'm trying to uphold certain values as part of the flavor of what I do. It's very comfortable for me because of where my Jupiter is placed. And I'm not expecting everybody that's got a passionate voice to put something like out there to be necessarily like an activist like this. There's a lot of things that people need, but I do also think that, man, we are really lacking in the quality activist, right? Making content, who knows how to do this kind of thing and subvert whatever the psyop that they're currently diluting your speech for, right? Like you notice that nowadays nobody freaks out if you say COVID because they're not that worried about the censors. It's like this very, very, very specific things that algorithm's now looking for, which is just making you realize that at this point, somebody's just trying to protect somebody legally, right? And that they know that they've lost that conversation. It also might be a moot point because they still kind of succeeded to the extent that they were expecting to, right? So, long story short is, you know, being a pro, you know, in this game, because it's hard because you're doing something that is, you know, it's risky if you're going to be able to support yourself and you have all of this ability to do an online thing and you want to throw it away talking out against the hand that feeds you, right? You know, at any given point, my authenticity may be biting the hand that feeds me, which I have to accept this for the best because that hand is not trusted, right? For a reason, right? And does the YouTuber, you know, have a way of putting that in there? Can they put that in there on top of the fact that they just want to show off their awesome knife collection? I don't know.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to hit you with the question, and I hope you're ready for it.
My God, is this an interview? I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, man. All right. If you could just do like a quick, like one-liner, like one sentence or two in regards to, you know, like take it back to the 50s, even like the 30s, you know, to the, you know, the generational, you know, wheel that's turning. Can you give like an overview of, you know, what this generation has been kind of like subjected to, their overall stage, if you will, and like the general conditioning that they were, you know, had to deal with and they were programmed into.
So we've been used to like 60 some odd years of boomers, the boomer culture in particular, running all of the companies that the mass majority of the population, or the mass plurality of the population, work for, and they're the people that get selected into government. It's the generation that was producing all of these artists and musicians for a very, very long time on top of that, until Gen X dethroned them in the 90s. And so, you know, the baby boomers is this big setup generation that was put through its delusions about the world through the 1950s with the Cold War and all the different things going on, the drugs were starting to come in the 1950s and things like that, and things like the beatnik generation, and eventually turned into the hippies, right? And so, you know, the hippies are still boomers, right? So you got like post-war people and hippies. Those are all boomers, right? My dad was born in 55. He kind of misses being like an old boomer. He's like a super young, like, boomer being in 55. So like, cause he didn't come of age to catch the hippies. He came of age to be a straight in the 70s. Right. And, so like, that's an example right there, you know, like, you know, at 55, you know, being born in 55, that means by the time you're there, like, you have to go seek out hippies. It's no longer the cultural thing that's everywhere. It's
like you missed the train or something like
that. Yeah, like you missed the train. So, you know, so he just can, you know, so like that was never going to be. I think that I probably wouldn't have worked, or I probably wouldn't have been born, just because he would have made so many different kinds of choices. Right. So it is what it is. And so Generation X is Generation X because they're the question mark, right? I think Generation X is what lies in the balance, because from this point forward, we're going to be largely Generation X in that category. People born in the late 60s up until 1980, right? Like, what is it, 65 to 80 or something like that? So you know, that's Gen X, and Gen X is just like, they're the ones that they don't know whether they're going to keep most of the boomer system or trash most of the boomer system, right? And everything is super shaky, and either people want to completely break shit down safely before it hits the fan, or they want to do an overinflated thing to keep alive something they think isn't that broken to begin with, right? And then this is like what everybody's talking about with like fixing Social Security, because eventually that's going to be a thing. And like, you know, I think the reason why these economic collapses don't mean anything is that the beast just feeds and keeps going. Like in 2008, we had the major collapse. It devoured a lot of souls. And it's now 2024. It's been a long time since 2008, and I'm still waiting for the collapse of the nation that 2008 promised, right? So the whole nation doesn't seem like it's gonna collapse unless the people of that nation collapse, right? 2020, there was no reason for the quote unquote Republican economy under the guy that they had in the position. I'm trying to not even pretend that these things are like places of leadership, but just the stuff that marks what's going on, right? Only because everybody agreed we should lock down as the choice for the sniffles is why the economy crashed. That's the only effing reason, right? Just like the only reason the stock market crashed in 1929 is because somebody wanted all their money back and they didn't have all their money in the bank account because they had lent it out to other people, and they never expected somebody to want just all their money back like it is their right at any given time, right? And that chain reaction of panic caused the Great Depression because people didn't want to invest their money like that anymore because of a fundamental distrust of the independent bank, which then turned into phase 2 of the Federal Reserve grasping control of the economy. And that disaster made all of that look really good. And with everything that we know about people who work and the economics and things like that, when this country was very serious about these things, we never had the ability to hear like the people like who's the one that we've been under Keynesian economics, and then who's the other one that the libertarians like? I can't remember his name. He was like Austrian. It's like the Austrian system or something. I can't remember. It's the one it's the economic system that Ron Paul always advocated for, and Peter Schiff is economic advisor, all that stuff, right? So for some reason that message didn't catch on with the generation, right? Like there was too much strength behind the idea of the institution and what it would take to transition, right? And it's not that hard at all. What's hard is that they don't want to change. They want to have that dependency. They want to change their relationship with it. They still want to have a relationship with it. And this is why we still have slavery, aka government.
All right, yeah. Going back to the astrological, like the more macrocosmic, like before Pisces, were we not in Taurus?
Aries before, like we're talking about the ages turning. Are we talking about the turning of the ages?
Yeah, when was Taurus? Because I was, what you were talking about just made me think about something kind of like stubborn, of how like there's like that stubborn mentality of our forefathers.
Taurus is pretty much all history before like Rome, if you will, right? Like the 2,000 year period before Christianity came in. Right, or before paganism fell in Rome, like because Rome is was a mark of the age of Aries, because Rome was a very Aries empire. It was a very Ram oriented like that in the way that it was, right, and then Pisces kind of put out the fire, right. So it went from the juvenile, ambitious spirit of the willpower, right? Because that's what the god of I think God of War is something that they became in our fall, because when these gods existed before we had war, it's pretty simple. They're willpower, right? These are the gods. So Aries is the god of the will. The only reason why there's war is because you disagree with me. And we didn't handle the disagreement very well, right? That's the problem with Aries, right? Because also Aries, first fire sign, incredibly immature. It's not always going to go well. You want to kind of leave the high negotiations to the Sagittarians out there. Sagittarians, they know how to do a controlled burn. Me, I just know how to get the burn out there faster than anybody else when it's needed. The problem is that means I can't be waiting for someone's permission. I have to be able to fucking impulse react. right? So that means setting me up to do it on my own and then put me in a playpen where you don't have to worry about anybody getting hurt that you don't like. Or that you do like, excuse me. Got that backwards for a second.
Yeah, we don't want to burn down the people we like.
Yeah. So the Age of Taurus is all that stuff that came before it. This is when all the bull gods were a big deal. This is when Baal was a bull. This is when this is when Hastor was in the height of her power in Egypt. This is all Age of Taurus in that respect. That's also the Age of Taurus is also the Viking Bronze Age, which is when our ancestors were their most animist in the earliest records that we have of such a thing.
Makes sense as the earth, symbol of earth, right?
Yeah. Things are earthen, and we had war in the Age of Taurus, right? War didn't just show up in the Age of Aries, but war, like that, the primordial conversation about war being about overland and resources, right? Yeah, that was it, right? You're fighting over land and resources, and then there was a religious connotation to that because that's our sacred watering hole, right? You know, like Stanley Kubrick leaves God out of it. He just has apes beating each other over a watering hole, right? That's just a mockery of quote unquote primitive man who worships nature and it's sacred. And but that's not just because I literally think it's a God thing. It's a watering hole. It's the best clean water in the next freaking valley, right? It's just like, we got it. We claimed it. We're taking care of it. It fits the needs of our people, right? And then it's just a question of, do you get sole claim over that, right? And somebody thinks you don't get sole claim over that or shouldn't have any claim over it at all. And this was ultra. You look at all the history books about the war. That's really what's going on. And then they just rally the troops behind and they said your God sucked, right? And that gets thrown in there. Because that's what happens in war. You insult each other, right? It's just like, I'm not racist, but if I'm fighting somebody, I may use a racial epithet at them, because perhaps in my rage, part of my strategy is to make you feel small. Because if I can get you to feel small in your mind, maybe you'll surrender. Because I really just don't want to fight you, so I'm going to use harsh language. Because I just hit you in the face, and harsh language would be a compliment at that point.
And we have a war going on now, and it's very much around words and pictures. Yeah.
People like to joke around online with the meme wars and this and that. Yet, yeah, what are we actually doing? And what are we actually taking heed to in regards to the programming that we mentioned in current times? It's definitely different than the War of the Worlds and that kind of stuff. What was that, like the 30s or whatever, when there was only radio?
Yeah.
So, like respecting our elders, I can have compassion, and first of all, the word respect is just to look at again. So indeed, we are having respect for our elders, yet we can respect and also try to correct, if you will, or resurrect, that moral goodness within individuals that kind of didn't really have that, or, maybe they were nescient and, over time were ignorant because, the whole reason I asked about the whole Taurus thing is because, I see, like the stubbornness of, the elderly, of not wanting to, change their old ways and this and that. They're so used to this, and we can be ritualistic beings and all this stuff. Yet, I have seen some change in a good amount of older people, and they're kind of more hip to the scheme and this and that, and that's really been great. Yet, and maybe it's and hopefully it is like a dying stereotype of, this, Taurus energy of someone being stubborn and being too calcified or ego attached to what they like Leslie said in the beginning of having that daily habitual ritual of, tuning into Walter Cronkite or whoever they liked at the time.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
that stuff, right?
Yeah. It's a very difficult thing because there's all sorts of meaning in their head, right? There's all sorts of ideas that if this exists, everything's going to be bad. If this doesn't exist, everything's going to be bad, right? It's just, and there's a whole understanding that they have behind them. And some of that understanding is like, they may have forgotten because it was something that was important for them to memorize when they adopted that way of thinking. And then they set with it because they don't want to freaking like think about it anymore, move forward. Here's my beliefs, my orientation to the world, and my correct beliefs that make the world a good place for me and everybody that I think is earning and deserving of being in a good place, right? And it takes a long ass time to show some of these incredibly stubborn people like this way, right? And it's like, buddy, like you vote and I vote, right? Allegedly. Right, like I don't vote, but my point is, like, you probably vote, right? I'm not going to tell you right now why you shouldn't vote. I don't vote, but like this is me going through an authentic argument, with some of these various people, and it's just like, listen, bro, I gotta push you on this because the things you vote for affect my life, and I don't see anything good in voting for you. So I don't vote as my favor to you. So if you're going to bother to vote, I want you to know X, Y, and Z things I've learned about this subject, which is why I don't bother with any of that system at all. Right? So that's kind of part and parcel of it because they want you all invested in these fucking things. So that way they can fuck with those fucking things and get you to vote for them. Get dependent on a healthcare system. And now you need to vote for the best freaking guy in the world to be in charge of your healthcare. And the guy who's in charge of your healthcare was picked out by a guy who had to figure out who's going to be in charge of healthcare, who's going to be in charge of military. And they have to happen to be a particular person that's really good at figuring out who's good at healthcare, who's good at military, and who's good at the treasury, and who's good, like, and this is all this stuff that we pour into our executive branch of this system. And you don't want to go through a goddamn civics lesson with somebody. You would hope that their intelligence is not that they'll go with you in accepting that, okay, he knows his civics, and maybe they can privately say nothing, say, oh, he knows his civics better than me, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. And then when that kind of thing happens, then it's good because then you can really talk to them because you've now overcome, you've proven that you know more than they do at that point, right? And that they can't say anything that would sound like a wise or witty rebuttal to it, and they have no choice but to hear that. And then at the end of the day, they can take it or leave it, and they can do the work or not.
Yeah, it's like have an open mind and open ears, seek understanding, be willing to converse with each other, like, right, no matter what generation you are, but really seek to understand the perspectives and the reasons why people do and think as they do. Be willing to have these conversations, gain the skills to have them, right? And take less offense, right? Because we're in an age of like everybody's offended by everybody, right? So we have to stop that. We need to like check our emotions and really seek the truth, and find the bottom, the core, the basis of how we can get along, right? We don't have to agree with each other on everything, but there are some basic natural law principles that can guide our behavior and how we work through our differences, and how rich a world it could be to really understand. I find I want to learn what the younger generations think and see. I really I don't want to just quick close my door on them, and close my mind. And I may, have opinions, and I need to check them at the gate a little bit before I spout off and act like I'm some like know-it-all old lady or whatever. I think that we all get invested in what we think is true, and then the people we talk to often feel like we're attacking them, and they're already defensive. They're already going to tell us, why we're wrong. So somehow I think if we can all just like check our ego,
right,
heal our trauma, open our minds, learn about what's really important, and talk, we could to each other, all of us.
Yeah, because Leslie, real quick, you aside from us, you actually do have children, so I'm sure you've learned oodles from them, and they're lovely growing up, and all these things, and finding more depth within yourself, and obviously, and so much more.
There's
know about it. Yeah.
There's a great deal of emotional bypassing that's going on, like the arguing over words, or the arguing over the existence of an institution or whatever. They feel like attacks to them, and then they make it about these other things because they're avoiding underlying issues, right? Because right now everything that they are weaponizing in the social services side of the government is all deeply connected to people that are addicted to their trauma, right? And so you're looking at a trauma addict. You're looking at who was it? I think was it Mario West just had Sarah on. I think was it her podcast? They were saying
Sarah Cross on Love, Truth, and Beauty. Yeah,
people are addicted to life.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
What she means by that statement, yes, right? I mean, because I could say I'm addicted to life, but that's different context to the word addiction, right? Because or not addicted to life, addicted to being alive, right? This whole thing, right? Because most people are not thinking above just existence and approval of family, right? I want to exist, and I want to have the approval of my wife or my husband and everybody in the family unit or whatever, because people are securing their social credit that way, right? And then your trauma is associated now with your values in your social credit, so you have to tread through it in this particular manner, right? And it's trauma and it's immaturity at the same time. And I mean like deliberate immaturity, not just the natural immaturity of being a 20-something. And so it's a pain. It's a pain because in the past, this wasn't like, the boomer generation, you didn't have that many people where you had to have a personal conflict with them to handle a big political thing, right? It wasn't that there was no context as that was the thing that we were, quote, fighting about as being two different socio-political identities and ideologies, right? But Generation X started coming in and stuff, and it's just like the 90s with the Lilith Fair. It's just like now I understand the agenda of the Lilith Fair. That was basically Hillary Clinton building her base, right? And that is all there in service for the left side of the agenda. And then that is used and it triggers the right. And then the right says like, it was such a mistake to be like cool with the liberals about the pot and stuff. We need to go back to being like Nazis while telling them we're not Nazis. Right. And so now
how can they not see?
Now we're just watching everybody gaslight each other and making all of the fun hangout places of my childhood suck.
Right? Yeah.
EBGBs doesn't exist anymore, and it's fucking New York fucking University shit. And look what that's given us. Give me my fucking punk show, you motherfuckers.
Oh, shit. I think we got to wrap this up sometime. I think, Leslie, You gotta go to work.
Yeah, I think we're in a good place. Yeah,
Not to cut it short at all. Like, I wanted to ask more questions, but Leslie, keep going.
yeah, I notice. I'm just gonna speak. I can see in my kids that they see the weirdness in their own generation. They are seeing stuff that doesn't add up, that doesn't make sense. And I think that that as we point out the incongruencies, as people in our conversation, can just sort of come back down to like heart-based logic and reality. I can't read that. um, it's like in weird.
The buds, the end. What did that say?
Dissolving the divide.
Oh, that was dissolving the divide. Well, yeah, as we're
like it says the buds.
Funny.
There was a spider that like crawled up in there all of a sudden. I had to like swat it out. It was weird. Anyways, sorry to cut you off. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, in terms of, there are huge divisions that are being exploited among generational differences. And then the media, there's so much influencing because of this internet age and the technological age and stuff. And so it kind of comes back, I think, to just persevering in our conversations and in our own learning. Like, old dogs need to learn new tricks. We need to get up and savvy with the technology. We need to get cooler with our, way that we're presenting, right? We need to break out of our little rigid boxes and get out and be open, right? And so I think that, there's growth on both sides, every side.
Like I said, in 2012, like I was the youngest guy in the game. I was the youngest guy at Revolution Radio, pretty much at 32 years old, going through it by 2016. By 2016, because of the early side of what was happening in politics when things were still on the populist movement and stuff, now all of a sudden, everybody wanted to have a YouTube talking about all sorts of stuff and going down all sorts of rabbit holes. And so much of it's gone really far afield of proper knowledge and wisdom. But this generation has come in, right? Like there's, there are cooler millennials that are involved in things now, right? A number of Gen Xers, are coming out of their shells because all of us seem to have kind of like healed all sorts of interesting wounds around the same period of time and have moved into being voices in our own right, so on and so forth. And so like these are good, these are ultimately good signs, but also there's plenty of screwed up places that everything can go, right? With especially the Gnostic argument, because the Gnostic is going to push really hard on this generation because they still need something that works with their simulation theory agenda. And so, the trap of the demiurge and all those metaphysics keeps them functioning in on the Kabbalistic system, strung out on the Wizadek, and continuing to work with false gods, such as the Gnostic Sophia.
Yeah, that was brought up by Septicus in his last segment. That was interesting.
Yeah. Would you agree that, like, even a figure like Sophia still has a positive and a negative aspect, that there's been an inversion of an original?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, exactly. And the question is, are the people that are looking at Gnosticism going to be like Christians and not transcend their Gnostic texts? And because, if you're looking at it, it's just like you're working really hard to worship the mother of the beast, because the mother, Sophia did nothing wrong is almost like the Gnostic apologist here. So it's like, no. Sophia did this terrible deed, but because her cosmology makes her part of the whole of creation, you just think that it's this, that, no. Look at the other goddesses. Go find a better goddess, or understand the yin of the higher force.
I kind of see that in my work. I did a presentation called Reviving Sophia, and in the way that I see her is that she fell. She was tricked. She followed the wrong light. She fell and got disoriented in a sense, and then became the mother of these beasts, and she had to refine to her true divinity and the true relationship to the masculine, and then to be able to rise out of that horrible kind of false evil world, right? And find the true connection to spirit.
And that's what we have to do. Right. And that's what we have to do. Right. This is part of that problem of the personification of the gods. Odin is not an old man in a cloak with one eye and a staff and a hat and a couple of dogs and things like that. Those are symbols. Those are symbols of energy forces and principles and things
ravens,
like that to derive from. Right. With the Gnostic story, this is saying that that level of she is not like a pagan god, right? She's way too far up in the primordial gods category, right? She's not like Freya in that respect. I can't really articulate it too much better than that. But it's but my point is that she's not terrible for people that don't know the difference yet. But the longer they stay with things that they do not double check, right? If you just go your entire life and it's just like you develop this attachment to anybody, like I don't have the attachment to my idea of Odin, even with what I said just now, right? Because things are so much more immense than my understanding, right? And if you can't respect that and you're too much, into it, because you still have to look at the meaning of her doing that in the first place, what that is representing. And it's fine as you're looking at it because, you feel your own falterings and you want to emerge out of that. But this is still similar because of the level, like creating the demiurge was a fucking evil act. She fucking should have killed it. Right? Because that's ultimately the problem that we're dealing with now. But she let it run amok.
And likely she was also subject to mind control and her own delusions of what was going on, or traumatization, right? So we can see all of this in ourselves and how we're participating in the evil and dancing with the devil and creating our own monsters. Mm-hmm. And unless we wake up to that, the wrongness, of our involvement, things won't change.
So we should not be dancing with the devil in a blue dress or whatever.
Yeah. Let's sing that.
Exactly. Yeah. But
like that guy on the Olympics.
Right.
Just kidding. Was he depicted as this, by the way? I heard someone bring this up in regards to something, blue.
I see. On the wheel.
There's so many blue,
exactly, like the blue man
group
and all that
blue,
shit.
there's so many things interwoven into that as a big hodgepodge of in your face, disregard for your more whatever, your mores.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that the blue guy was supposed to be Bacchus, right? And that's the deal, is that, they early Christianity, which carries into modern Christianity, was actually a mockery of Bacchus, because they undercut that. Many people now know the source that has disclosed that. And as interesting of a character as he is, it's also very important to know this in your own right, so you don't just have to cite other kinds of content creators who are not quite in alignment, despite the good work that they're bringing forward, right? So there's the Bacchic mystery school, and this is where everybody's like, hey, look at Jesus, he's just like Mithras and Bacchus and this and that, and right, this was their practice. And the Bacchus cult is like not even like Greek. It's like the way I've looked at the history of it thus far, and the different cults that are in that envelope, it seems to have a certain region that it kind of moved around. It had a fluidity to it, and then at a certain point, I think Roman Europe, it was also cutting through. And in fact, I even looked at one of these depictions of what was going on with them coming through at that time, with all the revelry, and how kind of it seemed like it really kind of ran amok in Europe, like, because it was, because you're talking about the Norse Germanic type of culture, and then you've got these Bacchus guys, because like you look at it and like it's not like they were stiffs, but this falls much more in line with the conservativeness of those ancestors, right? So I kind of looked at it. I look at the mythos of Golveg coming through, driving Freya mad, working with Heath, and I think that this is kind of what, when Bacchus came through Europe, kind of did, which then that broke down the moral values in the pagan society, which then led way for more Christianity. And I think I am destroying Derek with something incredibly funny in my statement. Derek, why is this slaughtering you?
It's his own mind. This is where his mind goes. It's so funny.
Yeah. No, I love your pronunciation of Bacchus.
How my mind draws these things together,
Yeah, anyways, what you mentioned earlier, I really appreciate your approach to life and just information, and just, where we are currently in this space-time continuum, or however people want to dub their current existence as, because, people like to get all hyphy and try to act all cool and do some kind of mic drop with whatever kind of lingo and linguistics that are in the mix, like some GMO Bizquick. But anyways, just people just need to understand the context of where people grew up from, with the technology they had, and in relationship to what they had available to eat, in regards to what's all connected to the fabric of life. Like, do we have bananas coming from the Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, back in like the 50s or whatever? Like, possibly, but it would take, a long ass time, and it was really limited, and all these things, and we take so much shit for granted. Things are so overly automated, and, the algorithms with the digital stuff, all that aside, but, it just adds so many more layers to whatever kind of self-entitlement or whatever, I guess. And you see just like the overlays of like the generations that are producing children these days. And it's not to say that it's like these conversations and these statements, it's always hard to like generalize, but you can,
like right now, it's
a pattern of,
it is making children.
Yeah, we can kind of see a tendency of these things, or even depictions of yeah, and things have been documented and written about through media, through the Lovecrafts and the Orwellians and Huxleys, and throughout so many different other types of expressions of art forms, and movies and books and literature. So what are we actually participating in? What spells are we actually trying to break? What have we read from the past and learned from other people's mistakes in real life, from books or teachings, whatever? And how are we able to relay that to our own lives to generate a positive future, and teach that to the seeds or the kids for that future, and try to relay that to the elders or whoever who did not get those messages, or were on the negative side of that formula, if you will, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff to like balance the scales. And yeah, like the scales of men and women are being weighed all the time in regards to mayats. Like how light is your heart in regards to your relationship to yourself, other people, animals, all that stuff, and Mother Nature, the universe, the you and I verse, to operate and cooperate, so we can all just try to positively populate, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yep. Stop caring so much about your credit score or our soon to come social credit system, right? That's the danger where we're weighing our value. We have to go back to the true source of
Yeah.
Ma'at.
Yeah. Like the value has to be coming from within you, right? I'm still struggling to pull the value out of me on that level, right? I can have as much qigong running through my system as I want. It doesn't make me a dime, right? So, general labor seems to be a decent course. Oh, maybe I needed a few more skills to get better work, and it's not about anything else other than my personal value, right? And so it has a lot to do with that. Even with these struggles, I can balance things out. There's plenty of things I can cut from my expenses. And you have caught a spider, haven't you? Yep. I know that. That's the, hey, spider friend, let me get you safely over there.
That's the hand through the web. Is that to safely puppet?
It's happening
Anyway.
like twice a week or something, once a
You
week
let
or
the
something.
spider web you, and then you just kind of carry him over. You put him down before he gets on your finger and freaks you out because you don't know if he's going to bite you.
He's only a baby. He doesn't know better. Whatever.
Right.
Sorry to cut you
All right.
off.
All right, let's go ahead, you guys, and say your final thoughts.
All right, real quick, because it came to mind because Zerilath, I wanted to ask you as well in regards to what you've observed from your father and mother and their friends and who they've affiliated with. What you've observed as a child in regards to their constitution, their strengths and their weaknesses, emotionally, physically, mentally, all that stuff. And what you've noticed as of today's kind of general archetype of that family structure. Not to say that your family structure is there's so many different dynamics. That again, it's just always hard to generalize. But just not just through your family, but in general, because we've seen even through movies, like people seem more durable or hardcore, and you see the emasculation of men in recent media, that kind of stuff. So just not like that's the whole bread and butter of the whole thing.
I think like not even looking at the movies is going to be a good standard, because like those are like those could be just like pretty boys, right? Just like there's a lot of guys they can work out, they can pose, so you can see like the long arm of their tricep or whatever. But like what can they do with their physical ability, right? This is why it's like I'm out there, I'm just like, okay, garden store, landscaper, furniture delivery guy. It's just like, give me something where I'm like doing stuff with my body and putting my power to use in the aspects of my brain in the process of the application of my power. Right. And so, that is, that's like, it's like MMA culture and things like that. Which, a lot of the values that we're talking about, it seems to be that a lot of the people in that world still have that, because you're going to have all these alpha males, and the alpha males are going to be attracting all manner of like average, like the ladies that aren't polarized one way or the other. They're just kind of like they're still like, they're normies, but they're in the middle of all that. They're going to be much more interested in all of that stuff because of all the confidence and ability, the level of safety that those men make those women feel. And so it's being just like having the women in the culture merely exposed to to more authentic men. There's problems there, right? Because the aggression, everything else. Jungle is has excellent thoughts on that stuff because of his discipline martial arts. I know you've talked to him in general. I forget if you've talked to him about the martial arts and his work in operating with that. I've talked to him about that.
Maybe not that specifically, but we definitely talked about a lot of martial arts things.
Yeah. So you have to be careful with the up and the down side of that as well, right? Because all of this is a reaction to the brute-headed mind of the prior century that we were just in, right? And how that carried into the 21st century with the way we flipped on the war on terror, right? Because we had a certain mindset about military force in America up until the end of the Vietnam War, which killed that kind of a spirit. And then they spent the next 25, 30 years shocking us back, preparing to shock us back into that in a heartbeat. And they were able to, through the seeding of anti-Middle Eastern, political sentiments or whatever, with all the random things, Iron Eagles, which was definitely about Libya, but wasn't Libya. Like, they wouldn't say the name of the nation, but it was dressed up like Libya. I was just like, this is Libya, obviously, right? So they just said the Arab terrorists, the Middle Eastern terrorists, the this, that, and the other thing, and they're just mean people, right? They're just mean people, and they just want to put your woman, in a face mask, and you need to do that with COVID, not the Muslims, right? So like all this is going on through the 80s, particularly the 90s, and then everything just falls right into place with 9/11, and then here we are in a bankrupted nation 20 years after that fact, due to the efforts, because we went back to that Vietnam mentality, right? So you got to watch that pendulum swing. UFC was rising to prominence from the underground in the 90s, and then became a big thing in the early 2000s, the same time that pro wrestling was going from
NWO.
Yeah, it was going from the
there will always be a counter swell,
right?
A counter swell to whatever extreme.
They were transitioning from Raw, which was like the punk rock level of pro wrestling storytelling, into the Attitude Era, as it were. Into, I forget what they call. There's a name for like after the Attitude Era in the early 2000s. This is when like John Cena was coming on the rise. It was a bigger time for Stone
Cold.
Right, all these guys, right? And so like that, they were moving out of like that punk rock kind of format that was the Attitude Era when they were fighting Ted Turner and WCW because they beat WCW. And then they kind of turned into professional television, right? They started being very professional television, and they started cutting back on blading and things like that. Like wrestling was going in the opposite direction, right? And as they were slowly transitioning into also getting rid of mockery female wrestling to legitimate female wrestling, right? And now female wrestling is like leading in the industry, and most of it, last I checked, it hadn't like gone woke. Last time I actually paid attention to wrestling, right? You know, it's just doing what wrestling does and doing it with the ladies, right? And it seems to work without being controversial on that level. And that's showing you what needed to happen in a generational setup, right? Because the attitude of the men when they saw women in the ring was just show me titties. I don't care. These women can't wrestle, right? And then eventually they had a few girls that had to do show me titties, but also wrestled. And now the ladies just wrestle, and their outfits they're not even that revealing because they're athletically proper, because it's respecting them as an athlete while still being sexy as fuck. Right. And so they find the balance, and now you've got all these female superstars that are hot as hell, but not forced to be slutty for entertainment in any way, shape, or form. Right. And that solves the problem. And for some reason, that wasn't good enough for the woke. Right? Because of how the next generation changed and made it a new issue.
Well, they can't even define, what a woman is, apparently. So go figure.
It's a cute joke because of the lines that they have made people say, such as the Supreme Court justice that was appointed by Biden and stuff. But that's all a gaslight. They know.
Oh yeah.
They do actually know, right? We're not actually fighting about words. We're fighting about these traumas that are part of a dark sorcery of that generation that is protecting the new front for the elites that they have put in, right? And
right, yeah.
We have to bypass that whole fucking conversation without insulting them, right? It's very
yes.
It's very difficult, and it takes stuff like, I wish I could just show the world like the very first Black Earth production video, and then within 2 years, they've gotten an initiation. Everybody's moving up in life. They realize that they're actually free by doing this, not in a cult, right? I wish I could just freaking make that point to somebody, but it's so far removed. There needs to be an underlying conversation just under that, just to get people primed to even be able to hear in the parlance, the vernacular, the context in which Sethkus is speaking, because Sethkus is Gen X, like me, like you guys, right? And we were building our proper knowledge and wisdom when all we had was Mark Passio, Michael Tessarion, Jordan Maxwell, a handful of good interviews on an Art Bell broadcast, and so on and so forth. And then like we had to figure all this stuff out and crack open a book or two and find a rare documentary, before it was on a proper platform over the years on YouTube or whatever. So this was hard work, and we have to get the primer conversation where it belongs so people understand what we're really trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. And we're all on different frequencies, it seems. And not everyone, but a good amount of people seem to think that they are aligned to or understand or know what the truth is about things. You've seen kind of like what I mentioned before, like this like mic drop mentality of people like acting like they know, yet, what are they acting upon and what are they based on? You see all the fucking unspectacular vernacular, in my opinion. But anyways, Leslie, I'd love to hear, your closing thoughts and any last questions for Zerilath, the immortal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what you just said, Zerilath, just highlighting the complexity of the situation we're in, and we may be able to see someone who's mind controlled and being exploited, and they don't see it, right? And so there's a certain sensitivity, a certain patience, a certain compassion, and a persistence of speaking around core issues and truths, right? It's this balancing act, and it's really stepping out of those extremes of the polarity, extremes of the emotional states, really activating the balanced brain, the feminine and masculine within, and the frontal lobes, that are fully online, right? So that we can have these discussions and receive the information and be willing to be uncomfortable, and have some of our rigid, calcified parts like loosened up, right? This is, I think, a really complex topic, but really important to reflect on, and probably we could keep talking. But I think that we can leave it here, because we brought up a lot of pieces to this big web. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Zerilath.
Yeah, no. I think, I think so. That wasn't a question there, right? Just something for me to respond to, right? Yeah.
What I said, yeah, you can respond to that.
Yeah. Just making sure I didn't miss the question, but no, that's right. And that's been the big thing with me. That's why, like, especially when I'm doing those drive streams, I talk in a very weird way, because I'm trying to get a general concept of a subject, and then kind of walk you into the point that I made up front, right, about it, right? And I'm trying to reach out, to those who they're completely, they got nothing, they got no orientation point to the occult, just like what we're talking about, all everybody on the normie wavelength and everything else, and trying to kind of show them, all right, I notice your trend over here. There's something wrong with this trend, and I'm not going to harp on your trend forever, but it's bad, and here's why it's bad. Here's the superior answer, right? It's just I try to go up there and not just tear things down, right? Because that's a big problem with the truther community. There's just did you know all this stuff is bad? Okay, all this stuff is bad, and now I have no stuff. What's next? Right? And this is the problem. This is why people don't. This is why when you're going, all government is bad. Okay, now I don't have government. Now what? Right?
They're moorless. They have no floor, right? They're terrified.
Right, exactly. You have to help them to see that. Have to help them and understand that they're not doing anything wrong. A cop is going to knock on their door because they started living their life this way. It doesn't mean the thing that they say that it means, right? And of course you have to explain to them why they would want to work on achieving living that way, right? Like I said, I can't even convince somebody to do pranic breathing. So I don't know. Maybe I just suck as
people are stuck. Yeah. So Zerilath, please share your where people can find your work.
Thank you. I put most of my important stuff on the YouTube channel Zerilath Immortal. So you go to these, youtube.com/Zerilath Immortal as spelled in the description of the show over here, Zerilath, right? And then Immortal, just like you would spell immortal anyway. So there's that. You can hit me up in email that's provided, zerilath@yahoo.com. And, that's primarily for things like this. If people want to do that, conversations, interviews, so on and so forth. But, also, I don't talk about it enough. Tarot and rune readings. I don't do the runes in general reading anymore. So my rune tarot styles. I'm not making any new videos of those, just because the runes are not going to be used any further in a public fashion. But I still will be giving those readings in private session that involve that. So I do tarot and rune readings, $120 for an hour-long session if you want it. Instagram, Zerilath on Instagram. I do a decent amount of little things over there, and you can find Zerilath Immortal on Facebook as well, and Zerilath Divinations. Those are all the primary places that I am most active on in the public social media.
Awesome. Well, everybody check it out. Yeah, I find your commentary really interesting, and you clearly have a wide breadth of knowledge that you interweave in a very unique way. So, yeah, really check out your.
I really try hard to get a rational point across about a very abstract thought.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you, Zerilath, and we'll speak to you later, brother.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching. Yep.
There's been a bit on my mind about it, right? Because it's hard to tell how generational that is, because, for those in culture that are sticking with conservatism, it means that they are adapting to those changes in a very, very different way. And I think a lot of them are trying to be very, very healthy about it, because of how hard many of us worked when the narrative was very different in 2016 as to what conservatism in America was trying to do, because there was still that a stronger spirit of that more libertarian side, never be up to Mark Passio's standards, but good thing those standards are there. Otherwise the whole thing would fucking fall apart. Right. So
good point.
The whole Ron Paul revolution side of things, I voted for Ron Paul back in the day, 2012, in fact. And in fact, I voted for him in 2008 because I decided to register as a Republican just to vote for him in the primaries, right? So, that's a little bit of where that kind of comes from for me, right? That libertarian side, which is kind of like the first thing you see when you're like, when your mantra is, I'm economically conservative, right? But I'm socially liberal, right? Then the libertarians are right there for you, because they're Republican light, which basically lets in the party, like the fun side that the Republicans lack. But they always worked against you by just having, cringy people be the people for office, and all of these parties have no capability of getting somebody as mayor. And then they get enough media attention to make you think the Green Party candidate for president is going to happen, right? But there's no ground movement anywhere. There's nobody. The party doesn't even have enough people in it to become something, right? And it doesn't do the right things to grow. It's unconsciously just being a pressure release valve for these childish monsters.
Yeah. And I think too, I think like the Green Party or the Libertarian Party is also like a pressure release valve for the people who are dissatisfied with Republican or Democrat, right? And you're like, I'm going to choose something alternative. I'm going to be independent. I'm going to be whatever. And then but it's a ruse. It's just something to ease your mind, think you're doing something, but then it really goes nowhere, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. With the thing about like the Olympics, one of my thoughts was with this generational conversation, like they did the Gojira thing, which is a different conversation from the tranny thing, and the Christians aren't complaining about that too much, right? Because they're going to be very familiar with it, and it's not Slayer, right? So, they're an amazing French band. I've been a fan of theirs forever. They've got like the way of flesh, the way of all flesh is a fucking ridiculously spiritual album. Like Esoteric Surgery, The Art of Dying are like two of like some of the greatest songs I've ever fucking heard in my life. They made an album in 2012, which 2012 is such an infamous year, and that album is called Les Enfants Sauvages, right? Which I believe that's the infant savage, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the infant savage. It's the terrible child having its temper tantrum. What do we get 4 years later from the drop of that album? You get the woke movement, BLM Antifa meltdown, right? All of it in the form of a particular kind of temper tantrum. So I looked into this because the reason why it's a theme, the very end of the NHS Black Ritual in the opening 2012 Olympics, because I do my homework, is the stillborn baby in the Olympic Stadium. In 1988, Akira, the anime, comes out in Tokyo Stadium. Tokyo was supposed to be the 2020 Olympics. It was the 2021 Olympics. At the end of that movie, they are in the rubble of the decimated Olympic Stadium in Neo Tokyo, and the main antagonist character Tetsuo, who's got the power of the Akira in him. He's basically a psychic super soldier gone crazy. He was in a biker gang, traumatized at youth, and rough kid on drugs, all that stuff. Has a psychotic episode and turns into a giant cyber bio blob baby trying to destroy everything as a hungry amoeba feeding on the universe, right? And it was going to swallow all of reality in its techno horror show if the generation that was preserved wakes up their abilities to counteract it. And that's where the three old kids start their little meditations in front of the remains in a form of necromancy to bring back the original Akira spirit, to bring it right. So there's a generational psychic warfare going on. There's calling in the ancestors, trying to stop this kid from having a temper tantrum and destroying the universe. Les Enfants Sauvages, I looked up the lyrics to this song. Tell me if this doesn't sound like Generation Z accurately. This is the title song to the album. So long I've been trying to match. It doesn't work. I'm trying. I don't know. The aberration of this world I try to deal with. It killed a part of me that was raging. The pain is gone. The denial. I've run away from institutions. I owe myself life. There's no way I will respond to this passion and anger flowing through me. There is light in the world I fight for. The reason you won't leave this cage, betray your child. The desire you once had to reveal yourself, forget to create your own life. Anger, lies, denial. This righteous anger boiling inside of us won't last forever. Don't fear to let it out. Branches have grown through. The wolf is your master. The sky is all over me. I run on time. So
those are the lyrics, yeah?
Those are the lyrics to the title song to that 2012 album. That's
Wow.
Now that is a very neutral message. It's got a positive subtext, but hey, everybody's the hero in their own story, aren't they? So on the metaphysical side, I certainly see that we look at ourselves, in that way that, we're righteous, just looking for a world that makes sense with love and connection and all that. But that's the thing. That's the message. And that's so basic. if you can't see the subtext, even with what those manipulated into the dark sorcery are doing, right? That's really more of a subtext right there. Look, everything I saw, I didn't see everything, but everything I saw said like, all right, I see the symbolism, but that's because they're trying to be a bit pagan and it's trolly to the Christian. This is Paris. I've known this is the way their culture seems to have been for a long ass time anyway. Right? So, you know, and they seem to have a hard time admitting that they were doing a Bacchic feast and not the Last Supper because they want to make sure it's about trolling the Christians. So they're not even telling them that it was Bacchus. They were just sticking to like, yeah, right, it was the Last Supper, right? This is trolling the boomers, gaslighting all the Christians of the boomers, right? And their generations, right?
That's interesting. You know, and I think that in a way, by bringing the Last Supper into this very, you know, the Dionysian Bacchus, you know, kind of Bacchian flair of party and, you know, I think, Derek, you had translated at least part of the song said, you know, if we're all naked, we're equal, right? And so, but it's like, if you look at it, Christ could be also seen, Jesus could be seen as a pagan. There's pagan elements in the whole Christian story, right? So in a way, it's like saying, you know, here's Jesus was also, you know.
That's the only thing it has to pull from because animism is the truth. It's the only thing they got. So it's just a hodgepodge of metaphysical truths and history to invoke a racial supremacy of one particular nation. That's all the Bible is.